Jai Bhim and Namo Buddhaya to all of you. Today we will be studying the lesson number 8 in our course of 10 lessons. And today we will be looking at or would try to bring together what we have been studying for last nearly 2 months. So let's begin with our lesson. I will share my PPT. So the lesson today, that is lesson number 8 in the course of our Buddhist philosophy, is titled as Ethics, Compassion and Liberation. And its subtitle is Every Action Rebuilds the Mind. So we are going to bring together whatever we have been studying for last few weeks, and we'll look at it from the practice and the practical point of view. So we know that we have been studying in our course that there is no permanent self, but yet responsibility remains. And that's how is it possible to be responsible at the same time there is nothing permanent inside us, or there is no permanent self, there is no Atma. So as we have seen that there is paticca samutpad, the conditioned sort of reality, the relational reality, the fabric of the reality, as we have seen from the Buddha's findings, is relational and interdependent. So responsibility does not require an unchanging substance. It requires causal continuity. So we have seen all about causal continuity in our previous sessions as to how one things lead to another, another to another, like that. So it doesn't need a permanent self or anything permanent. We can see that the causality itself plays an important role from the Buddhist point of view. So responsibility does not require an unchanging substance. It requires causal continuity. So we have gone through that. And we also studied emptiness, but we know that the emptiness does not make action meaningless. It makes transformation possible. Because of shunyata or emptiness, everything is possible. Uh, the evolution is possible. The emergence of the thing is possible. Everything is possible because of the inherent emptiness of any essential substance. Therefore anything is possible. The whole world can come into being because of the emptiness. So emptiness does not mean absent, as we have seen it quite deeply in our previous session. Empty means dependently arisen. So things arise depending on causes and conditions, and that we have seen in the previous sessions as well at length and at in depth. So emptiness does not mean absent. Don't imagine that there is, it's empty of inherent swabhava shunyata. However hard we try to find out the inherent swabhava, we cannot find out. And the another implication of emptiness is dependent arisen, dependent origination, or dependent arising. And we have seen that Nagarjuna himself describes shunyata as the dependent arising. So, we see suffering, we all see sufferings, and something is asked of us. So we all encounter suffering, and we can choose what we do about it. So the moral moment begins with attention. So because today we are going to talk about ethics a bit, so we have to bear in mind the moral moment begins with attention. And attention is very important. In the Buddhist meditation practices, we train our attention. And attention has to be what the Buddha called yoniso mansikar, the fundamental, the base of our attention has to be based on, if we have to be free from suffering, has to be based on the clear seeing. And as we are going to see, the moral moment begins with attention. What have I seen? What am I refusing to see? And what does this situation now require? So most of the times we do not see what is to be seen, and we do not become aware or bring our attention to something that is happening around us. And as Buddha has made remarkably clear that the moral moment begins with attention. So it's very important that what we attend to. So, if we attend to or become aware of the suffering of others, we can find out the solution as to what are the possibilities out of that situation. So these are the very important sort of conditions. The moral movement begins with attention. Attention is everything, and it plays a very important role in Buddhism or the Buddhist practices. So the question is, what have I seen? What am I refusing to see? And what does this situation now require? So, and the freedom begins when seeing differently becomes living differently. So we have seen that in Buddhism or in the Buddha scheme, it is not just the clear seeing itself uh, becomes living clearly. And we have seen that in the previous sessions that freedom begins when seeing differently. So we know that the samadhi or clear seeing is at the heart of the Buddhist practices and the realization. So we have to bear in this mind that if we can see as it is, or we can begin to see differently according to the reality or the way it is, as it is, this the way it is a word by many Buddhist teachers, and the way things are or the way things is, whatever. So you see, freedom begins when seeing differently becomes living differently. So it is not just important to see clearly. And our previous lessons have been about how we can see differently, how we can understand how we experience the world, how we structure the very experiences through our consciousness. And we have seen that in the previous session as well on Yogacara. And so seeing differently becomes living differently. So if we hold on to something as permanent, then we live like that. For example, most of us, all of us, live as if we are never going to die. And based on that, it's not going to happen to me, it will happen to others, it is not going to happen to me. And because of that persistence, grasping of something that is not there, we live according to that. And if we begin to understand that the life transforms, without change nothing is possible, we cannot arise without change. So impermanence is the engine of everything. The shunyata is the engine of everything, in a sense of the how things arise depending on the causes and conditions. So if we begin to see differently, we start living differently. So wisdom transforms perception. This is very interesting. The prajna transforms our perception, how we look at the world. It's completely transformed through wisdom. And ethics transform conduct. So if we live according to the values that are according to reality, then it transforms the conduct. Compassion transforms relationship. So you see, we need the transformation in perception, we need transformation in conduct, we need transformation in relationship. And that's possible through wisdom, Prajna, Sheel, and Karuna. This is very beautiful. This is the triad that Baba Ambedkar has given us. Prajna, Sheel, and Karuna. So you see how these three things tie together. Tie together in terms of transformation of perception. That's what Baba Ambedkar wanted us to have: new perceptions, new ways of looking at the world. He emphasized on ethics. More, he said that in Buddhism, the ethics have more value than the God. And compassion transforms relationships. So this is what we have to begin to understand. 1 minute, or we will go further. So please bear in mind this very interesting sort of things, that wisdom transforms perceptions, ethics transforms conduct, compassion transforms relationship. So there is no divine commander, there is no God, as we know. And so how, all these theistic religions are based on the authority of some higher power or some divine commander, and their ethical systems are based on that commandments from above, or some kind of god. But in Buddhism, there is no the Buddha found out that there is no creator of the world, there is no creator. And the world is not created, it has evolved depending on the causes and conditions. And there is no prime mover, or there is no prime substance. That is what the Buddha discovered. So what makes an action ethical? So the question arises, how do we qualify certain action as ethical and certain action as non-ethical? So your status doesn't determine whether your action is ethical or not. The ritual purity doesn't determine whether the action is ethical or not, or the obedience to some higher power or some higher authority doesn't determine the whether the action is ethical or not. So how does, the Buddhist inquiry go into how to know that the action is an ethical action? So what motivates it? This is very important. Three questions that we have to bear in mind. What motivated the action? What does it produce? What is the consequence of the action? And what does it strengthen? There are we have seen the model of the mind in the previous sessions, and we have seen how certain tendencies are strengthened within us if we completely habitually repeat them. So you see, that's you bear in mind that model of mind that we have discussed in the previous session. So the Buddhist inquiry is about what is the motivation, what has motivated that particular action, and the motivation determines whether the action is ethical or not, and what is the result of it, what does it produce, and what does it strengthen. So if I'm motivated by anger all the time, then it will strengthen anger in me. If I'm motivated by certain tendencies, those tendencies will be strengthened in my mind. So you see, this is what makes an action ethical according to Buddhist inquiry. Not status, not ritual purity, obedience alone is not going to make an action ethical. Rather, we should raise these three important questions: motivation, the result, and what does it strengthen. So ethical action has a direction. There is a motivation, there is a consequence, and there is a formation, sanskara. Okay, so the intention to sanskara. And intention is central, but intention is not an alibi. So it's not just about intention. Intention is center to the action, and of course, the consequences and the formation of a particular mental conditioning. So ethical action has a direction, motivation, consequence, and formation. Intention is central, but intention is not an alibi. So let's move further. So this is a very interesting statement of the Buddha, which I particularly like very much. Chetana aham kammam vadami. That's what the Buddha says in Pali. So Chetana means intention, motivation, volition, orientation. And if we look into Buddha and his Dhamma, Baba Sahib's great Magnus of he talked about mind in three dimensions: intellectual, or cognitive, and emotional, and volitional. So this volitional aspect of mind is very important. So we just talk about emotions, we talk about cognitive development, but we don't talk about the Chetana. And Chetana is very center, is one of the very important dimensions of our consciousness. So that's what Baba Ambedkar says in the Buddhism. So Chetana is intention, volition, and orientation. And as I told you in Pali, Chetana ahang kammam vadami. Intention, I tell you, is kamma. So this is very radically different from the karma that we talk about. The karma in Buddhism is about ethical action based on ethics. And action begins before movement. So before it begins in the leaning of consciousness. So, where our consciousness is leaning towards the volitional aspect of it or the motivational aspect of it, that leaning itself, leads to the movement of, body, mind, and speech. So the intention is very important. And that's what the Buddha said in Nibbedika Sutta. This is in Anguttara Nikaya. And this I took it from the Anguttara Nikaya's Nibbedika Sutta, Chetnaham Kammam Vadami. So motivation, intention, volition, orientation is very important. So, how do we orient our consciousness? Where do we orient our consciousness? Very important. So, of course, as we know that there is the Buddhist ethics is about, self-responsibility. There is no higher power. There is no creator God. There is no divine commander. In other theistic religions, it's such is the case. And Baba Ambedkar has talked about the triangular, arrangement, the God and human beings and human beings. But Baba Ambedkar says that, the love for another human being should be natural. It doesn't have to be mediated by some third agency. So there are three unwholesome roots, and this is very interesting concept that is a very basic Buddhism that we have to bear in mind: Lobha, Dosa, and Moha. In Pali, they are called Lobha, Dosa, and Moha. Lobha, Dosha, and Moha. So, these are all psychological factors that we have to begin to understand. Lobha means Lubbati. Our mind dwells into that, grasping. I must acquire, possess, or control. So, our mind is always trying to acquire. There's a tendency to acquire, grasping. This is called Lobha, Lubbati. Dvesha, Dosa is aversion. This means this must be attacked, expelled, or humiliated. So push and pull. We have been talking about liking and disliking. So mind is always about liking and disliking. If we like something, we want to grasp it. If we dislike something, we want to push it away. Pushing and pulling is taking place all the time. And then there is moha, mudata, and it is misunderstanding, not seeing as it is, not seeing the real nature of the world and our minds. So moha is misunderstanding. The situation is seen through distortion. So ethical training begins by recognizing the root before it matures into speech and action. So you see, there are, if you look at the Buddhist meditational practices, ultimately we are directly looking at our minds. We through our progressive practice, we look at our mind and we try to see whether it's in the it's now imbued with lobha or dosa or moha. And this is very interesting. Buddha simplifies everything. So we reach to a stage in our practice where we begin to understand, classify our mental state. This is kusala, this is akusala, and this is going to lead to further kusala, this is going to lead to further akushala. This is lobha, this is dosa, this is moha. The moment we start recognizing that within us, the our freedom begins. And then that's how our action and speech takes place. So ethical training begins by recognizing the root before it matures into speech and action. So we go below, we go to the deeper structures of our mind, and we try to understand our mind at a deeper level. There is a deeper mind, deep mind, and a superficial mind. I think this analogy helps, not the conscious and unconscious or subconscious, the analogy of a surface mind and the deeper mind. So we try to go deep into our minds, and the more we go deeper into our minds, we begin to see certain tendencies which are underlying causes of our suffering and our freedom. So the moment we begin to mark or delineate or become aware of different tendencies within our mind, we begin to resolve the hold of those tendencies within our mind. So seeing is very important. If we begin to see that there is a lower in me, if we become aware that this is a lower tendency, this is a dosa tendency, this is a moha tendency. So you see, when the moment we become aware of these, our freedom begins. The grasp of those unwholesome roots weakens. So this is very important to understand these three roots of unwholesome roots, and we are going to look at the wholesome roots as well. So these are the three transformative capacities. So how do we because our mind is all the time grasping lobha. So the Buddha has given the anecdote, the antidote to that, that is alobha, non-grasping, which means generosity. The more we give, the more we loosen the tendency to hold something on to. So dana is very important. So we develop a mind that always that gives, that shares, that cares. So the transformative capacity is a dosa, and that is non-grasping. Nothing becomes mine to have value, because you see, we use, of course, whatever we need to, but we don't hold on to them like they perpetually belong to me, like a house or prestige or whatever that is, our bodies. So you see, nothing must become mine to have value, non-grasping. And then the adosa is, of course, cultivating compassion. The more we cultivate compassion, our tendency to push, to become angry, to become irritated, the weaken. So you see, compassion is very important to understand this. And this is, dosa, adosa, compassion, karuna, and suffering is not morally invisible. I asked you to switch off your mics, please. Okay, so the karuna is very important to is an antidote on a dosha, and wisdom, of course, see causes without distortion. So you see, begin to see as it is, and pradnya is, of course, an antidote on ignorance or moha. Amoha. Wisdom is also called amoha. So you begin you keep these three words in mind: lobo, lob, dvesh, and moha. Lobo, doso, moho. Alobo, adoso, amoho. And these are the three transformative capacities which we all have, isn't it? It's not private to some special beings. We all can develop dana, we can all develop karuna, compassion, we can all develop pradnya. So wisdom and compassion must move together, and the wisdom and compassion uh, goes hand in hand. As Baba Ambedkar said, they are the two wings of a bird, and non-grasping allows both to function without appropriation. So non-grasping is very important. This thing that we don't hold on, even if we have saved millions of beings, we do not arise in our mind a thought that we have saved so many beings. So that's about non-grasping. So these three go together. They actually form the basis of our practice, and they are the three transformative capacities which we all have without fail. And we have to develop these capacities. So the capacities have to be developed. So, just to give you an illustration, so we have misperception, we don't see the way it is. And because of that, we grasp wrongly. And that grasping leads to intention, the chetana, and it leads to action, kamma. Then this continuous action leads to habitual energy, as the Buddha taught in Lankavatara Sutta. And then there are those habits, habitual energy or habit energy forms our character. And depending on our character, we perceive the world. And every action is also an action upon the actor. So whatever we do ultimately reflects back on us, isn't it? So whatever we do, whatever we speak, ultimately that creates a loop. I'm going to show you how it creates a loop. So please bear this in mind. Perception leads to grasping. Grasping, of course, leads to intention, uh, liking, not liking, and then action based on that, karma, and then habits, and they form a character. And the way we have structured our mind, we begin to experience the world depending on the way we have structured our mind. So this is very important. We keep in mind. And uh, so return to Yogacara. That is our last class, where we talked about action leaves tendencies. So we have seen the alaya consciousness. This, like, there is a very beautiful word in Buddhism. Vasana means like fragrance. And uh, as our mind, our deeper mind is infused with that fragrance of whatever we do. Whatever we do, they become part of our deep mind. They become our tendencies, underlying tendencies, anusaya. So action leave tendencies. Tendencies organize future experience. So we have seen that the way our deeper mind functions. 1 minute. Am I audible now? Am I audible? Hello?
Yes, yes, you are audible, sir.
Sorry, the electricity was not there. It just left. So give me 1 minute. 1 minute. Okay. Am I audible now? Am I audible to you all? Hello.
Yes, we are listening.
Okay, wait.
Sir, slides are not visible.
Okay. They will come. Okay. So, 1 minute. So we have seen this our previous class, action leave tendencies organize future experience, that we have seen at length in the previous class. So repeated action becomes the path of least resistance. So whatever we repeat all the time, we don't need a lot of efforts to do them. This is what has been proved by the experiment in neuroscience as well, that you know whatever we have been doing again and again, we just do it unmindfully, because our tendencies are now deep, and they govern our behavior. So repeated action becomes the path of least resistance. A habit is an action that no longer feels like a fresh decision. Very important. So sometimes some of our repeated actions become our habits, our tendencies, and they don't feel like fresh decisions. They just had happen automatically. Like a lot of things within us, all of us, there are certain habits, they just follow the path of least resistance. They just happens. We just do it unmindfully, or even if we are not aware, we do it. So the mind becomes what it repeats. That's very important, that our mind becomes what it repeats again and again. So there are two ethical loops that we have to understand. These loops we have to understand, the loop of suffering. So if we don't see properly, or we have a distorted seeing, by that way grasping and harmful action, painful world, and reinforce distortion. So this feeds back into our seeing. So if we have this loop of liberation, we see as it is: no grasping, compassionate intention, ethical action, clear seeing. It's all together and returns to seeing. So it begins with how we perceive, you know whether in a distorted way or in a clear way. So very two important ethical loops that we have to bear in mind: loop of ethics, that loop of suffering, loop of liberation. So we have to uh, cultivate the clear seeing, and we have to be able to see our mind as it is. We have to be able to see how we experience the world as it is. So distorted seeing leads to grasping, grasping leads to harmful action leads to painful world, and reinforced distortion, and again the loop comes into being, feedback loop comes into being. And how does the loop of liberation takes place? Through clear seeing, through non-grasping, compassionate intention, ethical action, and clear seeing. And the more we do good to the world, the more it improves our sense of clear perception. So freedom is not escape from causality. We cannot escape from causality. It is the capacity to redirect causality. This is very profound. This is very, very profound, that all the time we have this opportunity to break this loop, to develop the capacity to redirect the causality. So for example, most of the times our habits govern us, but a pause, or a few moment of reflection or meditation, a pause, between our stimulus and response, there we can pause. Then a good friendship can enable us to redirect the causality. Some good friend who can guide us, or likewise we can guide them, or they can guide us. Education is very important. Meditation or collective organization, sangha, can introduce a new condition into the process. So you see, we are not slaves to the process. Our karmas can be changed. That is the underlying message. Our habits can be reformed. Our habits can be changed. And these are the conditions. We can pause in between. We can have a good friendship. We can have education, meditation, or collective organization can introduce new condition into the process. So we are not the slaves of karma or habits. We can reform, we can change them. So you see, what am I rehearsing through the actions I repeat every day? So this is the question for all of us. So we have, even if we observe our life for one day, clearly we can see what are the underlying tendencies that are happening all the time, leading to the actions, and what I repeat every day. So they help us to break free and have a clear perception. So compassion is a form of knowledge. It's not just emotion, it's a form of knowledge. And we have seen that the wisdom and compassion go together. And compassion is not pity. Pity looks at suffering. Compassion enters a relationship of response. So you see, karuna is always, the relationship of response. It's not pity. We don't look down upon people who are suffering. We become their partners. We become their relatives. And compassion enters a relationship of response. So help that humiliates, controls, or publicizes suffering can reproduce the hierarchy it claims to overcome. So pity is enemy of compassion, and we cannot humiliate people because they are suffering. We cannot control or publicize suffering. It can produce the hierarchy it claims to overcome. So very important, compassion is not pity. Compassion begins in attention. So the mind, if we look at the potent symbol of compassion in Buddhism, Avalokiteshvara, it has 1,000 hands, and every hand has an eye. Okay. So attention is very important. If we attend to the suffering around us, then we it suddenly becomes visible to us. So you see, it depends on what we attend to. Our attention determines what is visible and what becomes background. Okay, so there is, of course, we have to understand the cycle of room, labor, interruption, and discomfort, dignity. There is always a scope. There is always a room for improvement. It's very interesting to see this particular aspect of compassion. So compassion is, as I said, is a form of knowledge, and there is the equality of suffering. Different lives, different histories, no inferior suffering. So, we all have different lives. So we cannot claim, that my suffering is more than yours, and there is no inferior suffering. So equality is not sameness. It means it is a refusal to rank human worth. It's a refusal to rank. As this slide will make clear, particularly the background images. So you see, so there are these four immeasurables, or Param Vihar, or it's called Brahma Vihar. Compassion as a form of knowledge. So metta, may beings flourish. This is what we think about people. Metta, may beings flourish. Karuna, may suffering be relieved. Mudita, may flourishing be welcomed. And Upekka, may care remain steady without becoming indifference. And we know that the indifferentism is the worst kind of disease. That is what Baba Ambedkar says. You see, we can think about Baba Sahib together with whenever we learn Buddhism. You see, so of course metta, we can see it in the life of Baba Sahib Ambedkar. He has always tried to see that the beings flourish, the people flourish, the suffering be relieved. Mudita is may flourishing be welcomed. So wherever there is a flourishing, we should welcome with joy. And Upekka is, of course, may care remain steady without becoming indifferent. So four important qualities that we have to develop. So see, compassion without wisdom may become possessive, exhausted, paternalistic, easily manipulated. So compassion without wisdom may become possessive, exhausted, paternalistic, easily manipulated. And wisdom without compassion may become cold analysis, spiritual pride, detachment from injustice, indifference disguised as insight. So the eye and the hand must form one movement. Very important. So seeing and doing must form one movement. So this is a very beautiful abstract art that has been that I created using AI. But you can see, eye and hand must coordinate. That is the complete Buddhism without attachment. There's very, very, very beautiful suttas about that. But the suffice here is to keep in mind, wisdom without compassion may become cold analysis, spiritual pride, detachment from injustice, indifference disguised as insight. So the eye and the hand must form one movement. So we now, of course, entering into Shanti Deva's realm, Shanti Deva and equality of self and others. What makes my suffering more morally important than yours? Isn't it? This is from Bodhicharya Avatar. So the body analogy, we know the hand removes the thorn from the foot. It does not ask, is this pain mine? It's a very common example given by Shanti Deva, who wrote Bodhicharya Avatar. And it does not ask. Our hand does not ask whether this is my this is fit, I should not help it. Very interesting. The hand removes the thorn from the body, isn't it? So there is the equality of self and others that we can bear in mind. And okay. So the pain is not less painful because it is not mine. So we are in the teachings of Shantideva. No self removes metaphysical permission for indifference. not self. No self removes. If we begin to understand that there is no inherent self, these all things are interconnected, then we automatically work based on the compassion. So no self removes metaphysical permission for indifference. So there is no scope for indifference. And we begin to see the pain of others. So even other people's pain, we can feel. That's our human uh a mind. We can That's how we have come to where we are as human beings. Not because we can put ourselves in the shoes of others. We can at least imaginatively or vicariously be other people and try to imagine or feel their pain. So pain is not less painful because it's not mine. No self removes metaphysical permission for indifference. It does not erase practical responsibility. So this is a very important derivation in this particular section, Shanti Deva and the equality of self and others. I resist my pain because it is suffering. Another person's pain is also suffering. Mine does not create suffering's badness. The boundary of care requires justification. So see that the pain, there is no difference, but the moment we make it me, mine, my pain. But if we begin to look at the pain as pain or suffering as suffering, not making it personal, then we can see how we can deal with that. This is we have I don't know whether we have done this in the course, but we know the simile of an arrow. So arrow shot once and arrow shot twice on the same spot. So if we are hurt, then this is we all naturally have some painful things in our body or in our mind, in our memory. It's but natural. But the moment we try to rationalize it, think about it, the second dart of arrow, then we suffer. That is optional. So this is how we understand suffering, not as a personal suffering, but the Buddha said there is suffering in the world. He doesn't personify or personalize suffering. So bodhicitta, this is very important heart of our lesson today. The bodhicitta, as we call Baba Sahib Ambedkar bodhisattva, and he had bodhicitta, the aspiration to awaken for the liberation of beings. So we aspire to become the Buddha, but our motivation is to liberate beings. Very deep. So the moment we aspire to become awaken ourselves for the sake of liberation of other beings, our path becomes very clear. So liberation becomes a relational occasion. It's not just about me. The liberation is not just about me. In my liberation lies the liberation of others. In the liberation of others lies the liberation of me. This is a very deep underlying concept of bodhicitta. The chitta that aspires to awakening for the sake of others. So one moment of compassion, it's said in Buddhism, the one moment of compassion has a power to, do away with our very deep underlying tendencies. That is the power of compassion. So, of course, bodhicitta we have to cultivate the aspiration to awaken for the liberation of beings, and liberation becomes a relational vocation. It doesn't become personal thing. So, how the bodhisattva transforms? So, bodhisattva transformation from how can I escape suffering? So, most of the times we are focused on ourselves. How can I liberate myself? How can I can have nirvana? How can I have the moksha? But the bodhisattva transformation is like this: from how can I escape suffering to what must be transformed for suffering to cease. Very important question. So, what are the causes and conditions that give rise to suffering, and what must be transformed for suffering to cease? There we can see very beautifully the example of Baba Sahib Ambedkar here. So, he set on to himself to transform, so that the suffering of the humanity ceases. So, personal transformation becomes the basis of wider responsibility. So, of course, we know Noble Eightfold Path. So, this is the discipline of ethical life and wisdom. Traditionally, we know Shil Samadhi Prajna. This is the eight wings of the folds of Noble Eightfold Path can be, categorized into three categories: Shila, Samadhi, and Prajna. And as we have seen, wisdom reforms the perceptions, ethics reforms our relationship, meditation reforms attention and habits. So, three are important, and that's what the Noble Eightfold Path is all about. And we will look at the discipline of ethical life, right speech. So whenever we speak, we have to bear this in mind, tell the truth, Does my speech tell the truth? Reduce division, very important. Preserve dignity, serve a worthwhile purpose. So right speech is not just about telling the truth. It's about reducing the division among the people. It is about preserving dignity. It is about serving a worthwhile purpose. This is a very important aspect of right speech. Their right action: do not turn another person's body, labor, vulnerability, or trust into an object for use. So that's the right action. Do not turn another person's body, labor, vulnerability, or trust into an object for use. The body becomes an instrument either of domination or care. So this is how deep the right action goes. Samma kammanta, samma kammanto. Right livelihood, of course. What does my livelihood require others to endure? So ethics matures when indirect harm becomes visible. So this is about ethics. Three aspects of Shila are right speech, right action, and right livelihood. And then there are actions, there are attributes of wisdom, and there are attributes of samadhi. Samma sati and samma samadhi are the attributes, and the rest are the attributes of uh, seeing clearly, like sammaditya, sangha, samma sankappo. They are the part of wisdom. How we can develop wisdom becomes the part of that. These three becomes the part of what we can say the Shila, and the rest of the folds become the part of Samadhi. Let me tell you this, like, the wisdom is related to Samma Ditti and Samma Sankappo, then Samma Kammanto, Samma Vacha, and Samma Ajivika. They become the part of what is called the Shila, and then Samma Vayamo, Samma Sati, and Samma Samadhi, they become the part of the meditation. So Shila Samadhi Pradnya, we can map it on the eightfold path. So we have seen livelihood. So the ethical test: does this action strengthen grasping, hatred, confusion, humiliation, domination? Or does it cultivate clarity, dignity, mutuality, courage, and freedom? So we have this test now, the ethical test. Suffering is not only psychological, as we know. This is where Baba Sahib Ambedkar is so important. Suffering is not only psychological. Of course, we know that a mind suffers, body suffers, also community suffers, a structure can reproduce suffering. So social conditions enter consciousness, conditioned consciousness can reproduce social conditions. So we cannot divide society and self, they are like intertwined. Here I like, Dewey's very important quote. He says that the mind is society concentrated. It's a very beautiful sentence. So he says the individual mind is the society concentrated. And as we can see from the slide, bringing Baba Sahib's insight, suffering is not only psychological, it's a mind suffers. Of course, we know body suffers, physical suffering is there, community suffering. There is a suffering because of certain aspects of community, and a structure can reproduce suffering. So compassion is social intelligence. Compassion asks who is suffering. Social intelligence asks what keeps producing the suffering. What is the source of suffering? Why there is, suffering is taking place all the time? So help the wounded traveler and repair the dangerous road. So this is an analogy that we just, if we see somebody hurt, because of the bad roads, so we help the wounded traveler and repair the dangerous road. So we just don't, serve the wounds of the person affected, but we also repair the road so that future calamity will not come into being. So Prajna, Karuna, and Samata, three aspects of Baba Sahib's teaching, very important. So Prajna is understanding against superstition and distortion. Karuna is love that responds to suffering, and Samta is equality that rejects graded human worth. So this is what Baba Sahib Ambedkar has taught us. No person is fully free inside a relationship organized by humiliation and domination. This is the very key aspect of Baba Sahib Ambedkar. And I think this is a very important sentence. No person is fully free inside a relationship organized by humiliation and domination. I am, of course, paraphrasing Baba Sahib Ambedkar, but we can find the exact teaching of Baba Sahib Ambedkar like that. that no person is fully free inside a relationship organized by humiliation and domination. Wisdom must enter institutions, compassion must become public responsibility, equality must become a lived arrangement. So this is just to keep in mind how, to summarize the memory movie. This will help us to keep in mind. Wisdom reveals. So wisdom is like a light that reveals. Compassion is an action, response. Ethics reorganizes action, and liberation opens the door. So, this is what it is. So master map, we can begin mind, seeing, intention, action, habit, character, institutions, and world. The world returns to perception. The circuit begins again. So I think this is what ties up with what Baba Ambedkar says, that the greatest thing that the Buddha has done is to show the world that the world can be reformed by the reformation of the mind and the reformation of the mind of the world. So you see, these slides connect the teachings of Baba Ambedkar as to how the reformation of the mind and reformation of the mind of the world can be, done. So seeing, intention, action, habit, character, institution, and word, the word returns to perception, the circuit begins. So Buddhist ethical practice works at every level: perception, intention, conduct, habit, relationship, institution, and share world. So you see, Buddhist ethical practice is very deep. It touches upon all the aspects of our experience. So that's the last slide. What would freedom mean if no one were left outside it? No self makes, this is a question for us. No self makes responsibility possible. Emptiness makes transformation possible. Yogacara explains ethical conditioning. Compassion universalizes suffering. Baba Sahib Ambedkar carries liberation into society. So, this is to sum up the class today. And let's now open up our class for any discussion. Okay, so if you have anything to say, anything on what we have discussed today.
Jai Bhim, brother.
Jai Hind, Jai Hind, Satish.
Yeah, it was a wonderful course actually.
Thank you, brother.
Last few years before, I did a course on J. Garfield from Chandrakirti and Disvayogakara.
Good.
It was around 600 bucks actually. Whatever it was free actually, and it's very, very good.
Good.
People need to learn a lot actually. It's so inspiring. Whatever you thought throughout this 8 course, it's a wonderful thing.
Thank you,
Yeah.
sir.
So we need to look beyond the structure and the social consciousness, everything. Reduce as much as suffering, work on the things.
Yes.
It's very beautiful, brother.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
So how many sessions are left after this?
Two more to go.
Tomorrow. Okay.
Two more to go.
Okay. Great.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much for.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, you have to compile this entire in one PDF so that we can refer again and again.
Okay,
Because
sir.
it's an ongoing guidance for us.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We will do it. We'll do it.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Actually, really wonderful.
Thank
Well, we have no words to appreciate.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Beyond description.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. The Dhamma is beautiful, sir. Buddha's teachings and
Yes.
our ideas, they are beyond.
And everywhere we are relating Baba Sahib, then we get more clarity.
Yes,
More
yes,
clarity
yes,
in
yes,
every.
yes.
Thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. So we have, two more to go, and I am planning them, and I hope these lectures, if it's as one person to understand, is we are already successful. So I think we will carry on this in the coming two lectures on the same depth and length. And what I recommend to all of you, it is not just that you finish it in one session, but you can go back again and again to deepen your understanding, because every lecture has the depth that we can begin to appreciate if we go back to them again and again. So that is how it is planned.
Sir, one more request, means with
Wait,
your
wait.
profound these efforts. Can these all be linked with Jatka also? Means if can guide us so that we can pursue in that direction also. Because we have spent a lot of time in learning from Jatka also. Sir.
Yes, yes, yes. See, this Dhamma is multifaceted. When we conducted this 6 weeks course on 6 session course on Jataka, it has that same depth. So, even if this is philosophical lecture, we are touching or thing, and learning Buddhist philosophy, but it's not different from what we have done in the Jataka or what we have done in the Buddha and his Dhamma course, right? So I think, everything ties together. The beauty of Buddhism is like how it can free our mind, how it can make us more knowledgeable, more wise, right? And Jataka has this function of bringing wisdom to us, through very narrative stories, beautiful stories. So as you might have seen that in these sessions we do not have many stories, but when we studied Jataka, we only studied very many stories, and that becomes the sort of a teaching device, pedagogical device. So I think the Buddha employed different pedagogical devices to teach, to transform our minds. That is the beauty of Buddhism. That's why he's called one of the greatest or the greatest teachers the humanity might have seen. And I think you can bring in Jataka. There is also a lot of wisdom, lot of depth, lot of philosophy in Jataka, and there are more than 500, 620. Some people say, and all of them if we study together, and that has a very different flavor because it's a narrative form of pedagogy. Here we are going conceptually. We are taking concepts, we are analyzing them, we are synthesizing them. So here the approach is different, but the purpose is the same: to cultivate Shila Samadhi Prajna, right? So whether
Yes,
you
sir. Yes, sir.
whether you study it from that angle or this angle or whatever angle, the ultimate thing is how we deal with the grasping mind, how we deal with ignorant mind, how we deal with our deepest habits, how we can bring a change at the deeper level.
Yes, sir. I also connected it with the rhetoric patterns of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's lectures also. Those were fully and means deeply connected, sir. Thank you so much.
So see, I think study matters because in the Buddhist history, Buddhism might be the first religion, if we call it religion, which was based on the books. And though we don't accept the praman of Shabda, but the Buddhists produced so many books, so many literature, so much of philosophy, and it always emphasized on learning, reading, studying, going deeper, understanding, and I think these are all important aspects. So study of Buddhism. That's why we have had universities, libraries, because study has been emphasized in the Buddhist system everywhere: North India, South India, East India, West India. They're all big libraries, student coming, studying for years and years. The kind of philosophy that we are studying here is, it's not an outcome of a few years. It's a generation after generation, the wealth created generation after generation. So very, very profound, what Buddhism has done in the history of the world, we can now, we don't appreciate even the tip of it. It has done so much to the world. It has influenced the world so much. And now it's time for the home, ground to come back to learning Buddhism, studying Buddhism, understanding the suttas.
All this in very, very beautiful eightfold paths to follow.
Yes.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. So I think if we do not have more questions, we will end our class today here and meet you for the 9th session next week. Okay? Jai Bhim,
Thank you.
Namo Buddhaya.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you so much.